Hey YouTube, Todd here again, another video. This time we're going to be talking specifically about clearing the P01, P0401 check engine light code on the 98 Ford Contour GL with the V6 and the 4-speed automatic transaxle. Now, this is the first fix I actually did on the Cougar, I guess back in March, because that's the only engine code it was showing. It's a very simple fix. It's fairly common, and it's really not a question of if, but when you're going to get this. And this applies specifically to the Contour, the Mercury Mystique, the Mercury Cougar, the Ford Mondeo, and basically, I would say just about any vehicle with a EGR system, which is pretty much all of them. So here you see a cutaway I found on the internet of the throttle body mount to the upper intake manifold. And the problem with the P0401 is EGR insufficient flow. The EGR works by venting exhaust gas through this port. It enters the flange here. This channel is actually made by the throttle body gasket seals this channel off. So it enters here, and through these little sub channels, recirculates exhaust gas into the fresh air stream into the intake. And right behind here, you can't see, it's not in this diagram. This is a metal line, a metal pipe. That's where the PCV vents too. So you got a lot of spent gases, right? A lot of burned gases with a little bit of unburned fuel that's mixing in here with your fresh air. And then upstream of this, on your resonator, you actually have the valve cover vents dumping their spent gases into the stream. Okay, so why would you want, before I get any further into actually how to do this, what happens, the P0401 over time, this channel clogs with carbon, and the code is insufficient flow. Well, yeah, because it gets 100% caked up with carbon, and the fix is basically to remove the throttle body and the gasket, get in here with some carb cleaner, rags, maybe a small screwdriver, clean this out, use a new gasket, reinstall the throttle body, and go about your merry way, hopefully for, I don't know, maybe another 100,000 miles or so. So the Contour, as it sits now, is just about actually to roll over 119,000 miles, but it's due. I don't know how long the Cougar had been having that code, but what a lot of people, and there is some content out here. What a lot of people will do is, and I've seen this on forums too, both on the new Cougar and Contour forums, is they just immediately assume, well, the EGR is bad, so I need a new EGR valve. So they replace it, and then they replace the solenoid, and then there's a flow sensor, and they throw maybe $100, maybe pushing $200 in parts, and the light's still on, right? Because none of that was probably bad to begin with. And I've also seen some improper troubleshooting techniques. I'm going to kind of give out the book what you should do, and then we'll tell you. I didn't actually follow the book because I already knew what it was. It was that channel being clogged up. It was insufficient flow, not overflow. But the first thing, you pop the hood before you turn any wrenches, start taking stuff off, taking stuff apart. Make sure this vacuum line is attached. Okay, it shouldn't just fall off. But somebody could have inadvertently pulled it off or forgot to reconnect it or whatever on some previous repair, especially if you're getting the car second, third, or fourth hand. So make sure the vacuum line is attached. And even before that, start the car. The throttle's right here, right? So you can give it a little juice, get the revs up. listen to, or put your finger on that to see if there is vacuum coming to the EGR. The EGR itself is probably the most reliable component on this whole car, and probably on any car, right? So its chances of failing, I mean, it can fail, but its chances, especially at 118,000 miles, the smart money's on this channel under here. Now, if you do have a hand operated vacuum pump, or you choose to go out and buy one, and I almost did for this video, even though felt like I knew what the problem was. Step 2 would be, with the engine running, remove this vacuum line, attach your vacuum pump to the EGR, not to the vacuum line, right? But to the EGR, engine's running, and then apply vacuum. And as you get to whatever the threshold is, the valve should open. You're at idle, so now it's going to start feeding exhaust gas into the intake. The problem is it's running, it's at idle, so its speed is very low, and you should notice it, right? The engine's going to start stumbling. It could even cut off. At the very least, a noticeable RPM drop. That tells you that the gauge or the valve is working. And then, watch your gauge and make sure that it holds vacuum. If you do those, this is good. And then there are some limited tests you can do on the solenoid and this, that, and the other. But the fix is, is so easy. I don't know why you would go off on tangents looking at electrical problems. If the fix doesn't fix it, then yeah, you probably have to backtrack and start really looking. If you've already checked the valve, it's not that, then maybe it is the solenoid or something. But the fix is pretty simple. Now, on this particular car, I had actually 4 codes. I didn't actually pull the codes until after I performed the fix. So I only knew of 2 of those codes, the P0401 and the P1151, which is a lean indication for the bank 2 upper O2 sensor. So it's for this bank. It's not located right here. It's on its way on down. But through research, I have I did find out that a vacuum leak could cause that. It may not be the O2 sensor, and a malfunctioning EGR system can cause that. So, hopeful, kind of crossing my fingers that fixing this P0401 might get 2 birds with 1 stone and clear the 1151. Let me back up. I said that before and I got off track. Why would you want to pump exhaust gas or PCV blow by or valve cover blow by back into the engine? This is where the valve covers vent here, and not this big hose on top, but this little smaller hose on the underneath. Why would you want to do that? Well, this is emission stuff, along with the evaporative control system, right, to reduce emissions. Really, a lot of byproducts during the combustion process. One of them is carbon. Okay, so go start a fire safely out in your yard, right, and you're going to have that. That's some of the black stuff you see is the result of burning carbon, right? So to reduce emissions, the other reason is there are no perfect systems, so there is unburned fuel in all this stuff, in the PCV stuff, both from the valve covers and the crankcase, as well as in your exhaust, even catalysts and all that kind of stuff. There's still some unburned fuel. So that's fuel you don't have to replace in the tank, right? You make sure and burn it, or burn more of it. Another reason, if those 2 aren't enough, I do know now I've chased O2 sensor issues on this car for most of its life, and so since I've had it, and the previous owner did as well, because I have the work orders. But I know when I've had the O2 sensors working, I picked up about 10% in fuel mileage easily. solid 10%. So on a 25 mile per gallon car, that's 2 to 3 miles per gallon, and I'll definitely take that. And I'm going to put a link in the description too. I didn't find anything on the PCV system. I did find out, and I didn't know this, the PCV system was the first emissions control system dating back to the early to mid 60s. By 64, PCV systems were required. Before that, these just vented into the atmosphere and onto the road. And EGR systems just they didn't exist. Uh, so I would guess these were probably the next in development. But I did find a fairly recent study on gas mileage with an EGR system, versus one that's functioning, one that's not. And this study estimated between a 5 and 30% increase. Okay, so kind of worst case scenario, at least in my car, keep the O2 sensors working. That's a 10% increase in fuel mileage. Another 5% here, that's 15%. Yeah, I'll take that all day long, especially when gas prices spike as they always do. Uh, so how do you get to this? Well, back to this cutaway. There's 4 mounting bolts, and then or 3 mounting bolts, then this stud bolt. And I didn't really realize why it was different until I did this, because this piece was actually missing on my Cougar. Come on. I think my computer's scanning. Yeah, there we go. I slowed it down. My Cougar's missing this piece. This is just a little clip that slides on that stud to hold the throttle position sensor wiring harness kind of up and out of the way. It's been lost on the Cougar. It's still there on the Contour. So that was I guess that was my big aha moment here. Another thing I'm going to point out to you, this is not P0401 related, more P1151, but the condition of these hoses, and you can barely see the other one here. I got another picture of it. These things are close to failure, right? And they're going to start leaking, and they're going to start, causing a vacuum leak problem. So I saw that. I would have replaced these yesterday when I did this fix, but I'll have to go and buy some elbows and some more fuel line to be able to basically reconstruct this, because it tucks under the engine cover and then the breathers back here. And I need to replace that boot anyway, because it had turned to goo, and I kind of have it fixed with duct tape at the moment. But you'll need to, it's simple, right? Pretty simple. There's 4 mounting bolts, and then there's another bolt you can't see with the resonator that holds the throttle cable bracket onto the throttle body. So there's actually 5 bolts to remove, 5 fasteners to remove. You'll have to remove the resonator here, just the 2 screw type, hose type clamps. The plan originally was to just disconnect this, and disconnect this. That would have made it a lot easier. And then I really kind of noticed, zoom in again, the previous owner, she's had all this replaced with these funky clamps that I don't like dealing with. And I believe this feeds the IACV, the idler control valve. And then this, you can't see it all. This is just a black plastic tube that 90s down, and then it 90s again and extends under. You can't see it on this end, but extends under the resonator. So I guess that helps the IACV in some way. But I didn't want to deal with all these crazy clamps. This is just another hose type clamp. So the updated plan was to disconnect the valve covers, just unscrew this guy, and then kind of wiggle the resonator out under the throttle cables with all this stuff still attached. Well, in the process of wiggling, the airbox popped up out of its mount. It's just a pressure mount. So I removed it too. And that's fine, just gives you better access. That's a close-up showing you the dry rot condition. You can also see the reason for the stud um, bolt or whatever that was called. Um, I'm looking to see if I can see that neutral safety switch anywhere, and I don't think it's in any of my pictures. This is the other side. There's the reservoir. That's just a little shot of the little strip of the crankcase vent for the rear bank. And then I did notice this. It was not connected. So I have a vacuum leak there that fixed I wasn't even aware of. Somewhere either it popped out or I didn't fix it back the way it should have been or something, or somebody else did. And there's no telling how long it's been sucking air like that. And I hoped well, maybe that's my 1151K. So after you remove all that, you're left with this. It's a pretty good shot down the throttle body. All the mounting brackets are still in place. And now is a good time to look. Also, I want to direct your attention. This is another Cougar fix. This little piece of aluminum linkage here that runs underneath the throttle body, you can't see it clearly, but you're looking for these white retainers to be in place. If they're in place, you're good. That's your IMRC linkage. If this one is missing, as it was on the Cougar, your linkage is just going to be like laying here, disconnected to this arm, and your front IMRC secondaries will not be opening, and you will not get a code for it. Okay. If the rear is missing, you probably will, I would assume, get a code, but you may not because this is mechanical and not electrical, and I don't know that there's a sensor to sense for that. But this is like it has its own little. It's very similar to the throttle linkages and springs. There is, I believe that's the cable. It wraps around to under the engine cover. When the IMRC tells it to open, usually about 3,500 RPM, this cable pulls. It actually pushes this rocker arm toward the front, which pushes this rocker arm toward the front and opens up your IMRC secondaries. But check for that. Make sure that is connected. Let me zoom back out. And I did a video on the neutral safety switch. It's going to be down in here. I saw it, thought about taking a quick picture of it yesterday, but yeah, it's you really have to look for it. And I'd already replaced it on this car, knew about where it was, and so on and so forth. But still, I had to really look for it. Very, very much harder fix than this. So there's your mounting stud. That's a 10 millimeter, 10 millimeter on these. You really can't see the other mounting bolts, but they're directly under these. And then this guy's an 8 millimeter that just kind of shores up this throttle bracket here. And this one I probably should have replaced yesterday. I had more than enough fuel on. I probably should have just cut a piece and stuck it on there. But more content for another day. So moving on. So once you remove the throttle body, this is the throttle body laid over, and this is the back side of the throttle body and the throttle plate, right? You're probably going to see something similar. Good, if there's any good news on this, the vent hole is still intact, so that's why I wouldn't really have any idle issues. But all this needs cleaning, right? This should ultimately look like that. That's what it looked like when it was new. Some carburetor cleaner, liberal amounts, rags, toothbrush. Work on that. Clean this little port. I'm really honestly not sure of its function, but it's right here at the throttle position sensor, so I'm guessing it's fairly important, or it wouldn't be there. So clean that out. And then here is a shot with the gasket still in place, and you can already see right? There's a good bit of gunk here built up over the years and miles. This little hole is what I mentioned before. This is your PCV inlet. So you've got EGR, you got exhaust gas coming in, and then you've got blow-by gas from the crankcase coming in, and there's already blow-by gas from the valve cover vents coming in. So all this stuff kind of mixes right here. And finally, you remove the gasket, and this is what you'll see. And this is, I'd already seen this in the Cougar, was totally not surprised. This actually looks a little better than the Cougar was. The Cougar was totally filled to here. But yeah, you can see the reason for insufficient flow because yeah, nothing's getting in. And then here's the little channels and the little nodes that are molded in there to presumably help swirl the air to try to get all that nice carbon, mixed in, and of course the unburned fuel. So this is the after, and these look pretty good. I'm going to zoom in. I could have done a little bit better job here around this pivot, I suppose, but overall looks good. Got, I don't know, 95% of any of the old gasket off both surfaces. We'll zoom in a little bit better. Yeah, it looks pretty good. And I did go back. That hole actually looks a little clogged there. I did make sure that was open, and it is. It's fine. And then the channel here, that's what was really causing the problem. That looks pretty good. It looks like I maybe missed some carbon there and there on that channel. But overall, 100% better than the than what we started with. And buttoning back up, installation is the reverse. Probably a good idea is go ahead and get, and I probably should have done that, some more fuel line and maybe some elbows, or at least look before you start, because these vent hoses are right on top of the engine. So after I buttoned everything back up, started the car, everything's fine. Pull the codes. The P0401 is still there. I hadn't cleared it. And I honestly don't know if it will clear. Maybe it would. This was a new code, and I kind of get back to this one. So I saw this. I was only expecting 2. Now I have 4. And it had been about a week since I pulled the last codes, and I had like 10 at that time. But I'd done some, replaced the plugs, done some other things. So I cleared out the 10. Drove it just about 5 miles or so. The engine light came back on right on when I got back home, and I had the 2 codes. I had P0401 and P1151. So I knew those were there, and I knew how to fix that. And I hoped fixing that would maybe, cross fingers, fix the 1151. But I wasn't expecting these two, the P0420, which is catalyst below threshold for bank 1, and the P430, the same code for bank 2. And of course the 1151 is still there, which is the lean condition for bank 2 sensor 1, which is the bank closest to the radiator. So these were concerning. And I don't remember. I wish I still had pictures of the old codes I pulled. I don't think I had these before. And this could be indicative of a clogged catalytic converter. And these cars actually have 3. They have 2 precats where the oxygen sensors are, and then the main cat. So I pulled these, and I'm like, that's concerning. So I cleared them to see what would come back. Drove it about 20 some odd miles. Now I'm down to 2, right? So that's good. And the P0401 is not here, just the P0153 and the P1151 came back. So clearing the P0401 did not clear the 1151, and even connecting that breather tube did not clear. I still have an issue here which is more content. But what was concerning here is both of these codes are for Bank 2 Sensor 1. So one is saying it's slow responding, and then one is saying it's indicating lean. So I did look at live data, and I think I do have a problem with that sensor. So that's future content, replacing that Bank 2 Sensor 1 to see if that will clear hopefully both of these. And I'll go ahead and do a little foreshadow on this P0420 and 30. That's concerning too, knowing the history of the car and with the O2 sensors having their share of trouble, which means the ECU or the PCM goes into the open loop where it does not take the data from the O2 sensors and instead relies on its other sensors for fuel trim, and it uses its fuel map, which tends to be a bit richer than than using the O2 sensors to fine tune to fuel trim. Hence the 10% gain in fuel mileage. So, given the car's history of local drives, at least for the first 66,000 miles, the carbon buildup, the rich condition, I'm, started worrying about these. So I'm going to do another video, a follow-up video to the 420 and 430. And it took them, they didn't show up, as they didn't show up with the P0401 and 1151. So somewhere in that week or week and a half, these codes came up. After driving 20, 25 miles, they still hadn't come up. But I was still concerned. I really don't have to worry about replacing the catalytic converters on these guys. So I have content to follow up on the P0420 and 0430, as well as the P0153 and 1151, chasing that oxygen sensor back. I did pull the live data on these, especially seeing now I have two codes on basically saying the same sensor, and it does appear stuck. It appears like it is not. It's just sitting there. It's reading voltage, but it's very low, which would be lean, and then correspondingly the downstream sensor is it's staying right with it because the engine's running lean. So I don't know so much now that it's a vacuum problem, even though the intake manifolds are kind of known about this mileage to leak. I think it's going to be that O2 sensor this time. So I'll have follow-up videos on it. I'll have follow-up videos on the P0420 and 30 for the catalysts. And I did, just as a foreshadow, I guess, for an upcoming vid, I just drove the car 150 miles today using a little trick to hopefully clear P0420 and 30 codes, and the codes are not back. So I still have these same two codes. So I kind of did that as preemptive because I don't want them to come back. I didn't have them, so I didn't technically clear the codes, but I didn't have them when I did the treatment, but I had them previously, like the day previously, and they haven't come back after 150 miles. So I'm hopeful that was enough, and I can just concentrate on these guys. But that's all I have, guys. Thanks again for watching. Please remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and look for a new video soon. Thanks. Bye.